Governance without a ruler. Over enough quarters, power migrates from people to the checklists, dashboards, notifications, and approvals that survive every reorg. You feel it when meetings multiply, a button becomes mandatory, and nobody can name the decision maker, yet everyone's day is still being directed. When nobody appears to be in charge, governance has not disappeared. It has been redistributed into rules, defaults, metrics, and cues, and time horizon turns those small mechanisms into durable authority. At small scale, this feels like convenience, a template, a policy, an automated gate. At scale, those same pieces decide what gets funded, what gets delayed, and which risks are tolerated. This is power without a face, not a single ruler, but an operating system of constraints that shapes choices faster than any meeting can. In the short term, distributed decision-making arises for understandable reasons. Coordination is expensive, attention is scarce, and a team cannot route every choice through a single person without stalling. So systems are built to compress judgment into artifacts, a metric threshold, an approval step, a service level timer, a risk category, a standard operating procedure. The explicit constraint is capacity. There are only so many hours, reviewers, and cognitive cycles, so judgment gets encoded. Once encoded, incentives attach. People learn quickly what the system rewards: green status, on-time delivery, low variance, fewer escalations. A feedback loop forms. What is measured becomes what is optimized. What is optimized becomes what is celebrated. What is celebrated becomes what is staffed. What is staffed becomes what is measured even more. No individual has to intend this. The loop runs on its own fuel: recognition, budgets, promotions, and relief from scrutiny. Over the mid-horizon, trade-offs harden into architecture. A gate meant to prevent rare failures becomes a permanent toll booth. A dashboard meant to inform becomes a ranking. A temporary workaround becomes a dependency. Here the trade-off is explicit: speed versus auditability, flexibility versus consistency, local autonomy versus global comparability. Because the costs of friction are immediate and visible, while the costs of lost learning are delayed and diffuse, systems often choose legibility over adaptability. That choice is not evil. It is a governance decision made through design. Across longer horizons, the second-order effect appears. People stop arguing with the rule and start arguing within the rule. When a process becomes the environment, imagination shrinks to what the form allows. If the form asks for quarterly numbers, then the world is interpreted as quarterly numbers. If the form asks for risk categories that miss new threats, then new threats are treated as out of scope. This is how hidden rule systems become sovereign. They define what is real enough to be acted upon. And uncertainty matters. Complex environments contain tail risks, rare high-impact failures that are not well represented in averages and dashboards. When governance is distributed into metrics and defaults, it can become robust to routine variation, but brittle to novelty. The system handles the expected, then fails loudly at the edges. Nobody is in charge of that brittleness, because it is an emergent property of incentives meeting constraints over time. So who governs? The answer is not only leaders, and not only culture. Governance is also performed by whatever allocates attention and imposes consequence. The alert that wakes someone at night, the cue that delays a launch, the rubric that grants approval, the metric that justifies a headcount. Power, in this sense, is the pattern of permitted moves. This shifts how responsibility is understood. In visible rule, responsibility is tied to a person who decided. In hidden rule, responsibility is scattered across designers, operators, reviewers, and the silent majority who comply, because compliance is cheaper than dissent. The system does not remove agency, it rearranges it. It makes some choices easy, some choices costly, and some choices nearly unthinkable. Attention is the hinge. What you repeatedly notice becomes what you repeatedly protect. What you never see becomes what you quietly spend. When governance is embedded in workflow, the moral drama is not in a dramatic decision, it is in the ordinary, repeated selection of what gets counted, what gets escalated, and what gets ignored. Hold a single act of reflection and keep it at one time horizon. Choose the next 6 months, or the next 2 years, or the next decade. Then name one hidden governor in your environment, not a person, but a mechanism, a dashboard threshold, a required approval, a checklist item, a notification rule, a budget cadence. Ask, without trying to fix anything, what behavior does this mechanism make easy? What behavior does it make expensive? and what tail risk might be accumulating precisely because the mechanism is effective at producing clean-looking outcomes. Let that be enough for the moment. Reflection is not a performance. It is a way of seeing where authority actually lives. When nobody appears to be in charge, the system is still governing, through constraints that rarely announce themselves. The future is shaped by constraints, not wishes.